Well, I'm truly thrilled to be joined here by Ari, who I've had the pleasure of knowing for many years now, and who's worked with us on Chainlink and at Chainlink Labs for many years. He's a truly insightful, very thoughtful, forward-looking person that has a very artistic and creative way about everything he does. And I think now that's been expressed in this book that we're launching here today. So I think it's great that there's so much interest in it, and then we have such a community here. And just want to congratulate Ari on the launch of his book. I think that's the first thing. It's a big moment for him. I just want to congratulate.
Thank you. I'm over the moon about being here, not just having the opportunity to launch the book, of course, but the book is a commemoration of my journey, among other things, with you and Steve and the Chainlink community and with other friends who are here tonight. So I'm just delighted to be here.
Sounds great. Thank you, Ari. It's a very interesting book. I've definitely looked at it many times. We thought about it a lot. It's great. So I'm just going to kind of jump into some of the things that I think people might find interesting. I think the first question is, what is the book about? What is the Oracle about? And what served as your inspiration to write the book?
Now, the book is about a software developer at an Oracle company, coincidentally, who is targeted by what the book refers to as a rogue smart contract. This is a smart contract designed to do bad things. In this case, the contract is offering a bounty, a monetary reward for the death of the hero of the novel. And as we know, smart contracts are in principle unstoppable, so this makes for great thriller material. And the task of the hero is to preserve his life in the face of this looming threat. So that's the synopsis of the book. AI tools come into play in the book in an interesting way. AI tools are used to adjudicate claims against the contract, and that's something we should talk a bit about. I should point out this is a near future science fiction tale. What happens in the book can't happen in reality today, but in the future could, so it's a cautionary tale among other things. The book has its origins, to answer your second question, in two things. The first is actually just a stone's throw away, namely a bridge, a sky bridge. So if you walk on the High Line, just 2 blocks over, you may see a bridge spanning 2 buildings. Actually, 2 buildings that used to belong to a Nabisco cookie factory. And I used to pass that bridge every day on my way to work. It is a lovely thing. It's an Art Deco bridge. And at one point it occurred to me that would be the ideal place to have an office. It's got windows on both sides overlooking the street. It's the center of Manhattan and so on and so forth. And then one day, the hero of the novel just sort of appeared in my imagination in this space. So that was the first thing. The second thing was a research paper I co-authored back in 2015, 2016 on some of the bad uses of smart contracts, let's say criminal uses that crop up in the book. And believe it or not, that was my introduction in some sense to Oracle systems. That I got started by realizing it's not just the bad things, it's the good things in smart contracts that require access to real world data. And it was because of that paper that I began working on building Oracle systems and ultimately met you and Steve, and the rest is history.
Yeah, makes sense. It's amazing the places inspiration comes from. It's always very unexpected. When I first saw this book, I thought it was very interesting. And I immediately thought what I would do at this moment, which is to say that I'm not the hero in this book. This book is not about me.
Correct.
Absolutely correct. Just so we're all super duper clear. But it's a wonderful book and you should read it, and it's great, and it is, but not about me. But it's great. So I think the inspiration from this book coming from these walks makes a lot of sense. I know that a lot of authors They walk and they think, and kind of things just come their way. And so I think that creative process is just an amazing thing. So I think it resulted in something very good here. One of the places that things intersect here is the comparison between ancient oracles and modern oracles for blockchains. How would you compare those, the ancient oracles and the modern ones for blockchains?
Yeah, so on the face of it, you may think blockchain oracles, Oracle of Delphi, the Oracle of Delphi plays a significant role in the novel. What is the possible connection between the two other than the word oracle? But it turns out there is actually a deep connection. So in ancient Greece, when a community needed an answer to a pressing question, sometimes a question of life and death, should we go to war? Should we found a colony? What gods should we worship and how? At the apogee of power and influence of the Oracle of Delphi, they would send an embassy to Delphi to get the answer. And so Delphi was serving as a fountainhead of truth, a definitive source of truth. And it played a pivotal role in the history of Greece. Well, what are we trying to build when we construct oracle systems today? What is the end goal here? It's to serve as a definitive source of truth. And the hope and my belief is that they can play as important a role in blockchain systems as the Oracle of Delphi did in the fabric of ancient Greek culture. So there is a connection between the two. And there are other connections, interesting resonances between the ancient world and the modern one. Now, another reason for my incorporating ancient history and lore into the novel is that we're creating a kind of modern mythology under our very noses that I think we often fail to appreciate. Starting with the mythical founder of our industry, Satoshi Nakamoto. Right? Myths don't get much better than that. Somebody creates this wonderful technology and then just disappears and abandons colossal fame and tens of billions of dollars in wealth. That's a wonderful emerging mythology. And I think we can look to the ancient world to see how mythologies get crafted and to draw inspiration in the sense of awe from the mythology that we're creating today.
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. I mean, the way I see it is that throughout time there have been sources of truth, basically, and the Oracle of Delphi was a source of truth for that society. And then there was all kinds of scientific progress, and science became a source of truth for people. And now the internet's a source of truth, and that's going kind of okay. Hard to tell some days, but generally speaking, society needs a reliable source of truth. It could be from mythology, could be from the Oracle of Delphi, could be from the internet, could be from any number of places. But usually, the better the system you make to power and process all that, the better things work in society. From my kind of worldview of it. So I think there is a kind of parallel in terms of what is the source of truth for society to make decisions together and agree on, right? Like in the Oracle of Delphi example, the Oracle of Delphi would say, we got to go left. So society would go left, or society go wherever they right or wherever they go. And so, I think in that sense, we're trying to create something that can do that.
Yeah.
Which I guess brings me to the next question of, the Oracle problem. So how would you define the Oracle problem, and what do you feel is the value of solving the Oracle problem for society?
Yeah, this is a tough one. Definitions are hard. So I'm going to give us maybe somewhat narrow definition, which is that the Oracle problem involves building a trustworthy and performant connection between blockchains and other systems, in a nutshell. And on the face of it, this problem seems relatively easy, right? I just need to relay some data from a web server, right? But as you know well, of course, often the sources of data we're drawing on are less reliable than we would like them to be for the purpose to which we're putting them. Right? This is the reason, for instance, that we draw on a multiplicity of data sources in Oracle systems today. And the problem gets even more interesting when we start connecting smart contracts and blockchain systems to AI models, because then we're going to want to know not only that we're fetching valid outputs from AI models, but that those models have critical properties that the applications relying on them want to see, right? That the model was well trained, that the model doesn't have backdoors, that the model is free from bias, and so on and so forth. So I think there are many dimensions to the problem, but it's the trustworthiness in the sense that I just described it, and also performance, right? We need to accelerate the operations happening on chain additionally with Oracle systems.
Do you feel oracles extend only to connecting and creating trustworthiness to on-chain? Or do you feel that also off-chain systems can benefit from Oracle networks?
Yeah, as I said, my definition was somewhat narrow. I mean, how do you define the Oracle problem?
That's actually a really good question.
It's tough. Yeah.
It's my initial definition was more from the computer science side of things, that it's anything that proves to a system something it can't prove to itself. Like it can give it something that it can't access on its own. And in that very broad definition, I think for me, it extends to blockchains as a good initial consumer, because they're very sensitive to the accuracy and the reliability of those reports, right? Of the things the Oracle proves. But really, if you get Oracle networks to be sufficiently performant, sufficiently connected, sufficiently reliable, sufficiently doing enough things, including the stuff with AI models, which I'm sure we'll chat about, then I think probably all systems could benefit from more secure connections, more trustworthy data, all this type of stuff. I think the early adopter group of Oracle network computations, data connections, and cross-chain connections is blockchains, because you have these deterministic contracts that if they're connected to a faulty system, they fail. And so there's a very high level of sensitivity to that system meeting a high bar. But then if you were to ask other people building other systems, would you like your system to be connected to something that meets a high bar as this? I think they would say yes. I've seen many cases where they do say yes. It's just not, I would say it's not the initial market for Oracle networks, if that makes sense.
It does make sense.
And the benefit to society, let's say we go down this path of making Oracle networks, making them function correctly, super connected to everything, performant, reliable, easy to integrate with. What do you feel the impact on society will be?
Well, we live in an age where it seems that truth is constantly under siege. And as I mentioned, the Oracle of yore, the Oracle of Delphi, helped establish societal consensus. That was one of its functions, actually. It would be very nice if we can build a source of truth that helps eliminate some of the fractiousness that society is riven by now. That's a very lofty goal, right? I mean, a more short-term goal would be, of course, to improve performance and reliability in blockchains, to displace parts of the traditional financial infrastructure that are creaky, functioning inefficiently, that are benefiting entrenched players, and so on and so forth. But I think there is this broader goal as well.
Yeah, makes sense. So I think for me, there's a kind of transactional truth and the efficiency of that transaction and all the truth around it, and getting that truth to all the counterparties and getting everyone to agree and getting everyone to rely on everything efficiently and sync with everything. And that transactional truth is kind of what I think a lot of the current use cases are about, like DeFi and stuff in banking and so on. And that's going to benefit the players that adopt that technology. And then the other players will be forced to adopt it as well. And eventually everyone's going to be on a kind of a system of transactional truth that if you're not within that system, you can't really transact, right? Because you're in some world where people can't understand what's going on and they don't want to take the risk. And why would they if they don't have to, basically? And then there's this version of societal truth. And in societal truth is what you said and what people experience with the internet and all this type of stuff where, interestingly enough, AI models, I think, have a similar problem where they don't have anchor data sometimes to tell what's true and not true. And that leads to whatever hallucination or whatever else it leads to. So I think there's just like an endemic influx, like a fire hose of information, but there's kind of a very big problem in filtering all that, both at the level of machines and people and everyone. And to know what's definitively true is a very valuable thing that systems other than Oracle networks I don't really see solving. I see systems kind of pre-deciding what truth is rather than making a system that figures out what truth is. And that's what Oracle networks, I think, in the long term could do. if they become robust enough. Which, surprisingly, leads me to my next question. So there are a lot of implications of AI in the novel. That's throughout the novel and felt there. Would you say that the convergence of blockchain technology and AI technology and Oracle network technology is something that is a good thing or a bad thing for society?
Yes, in a word. It's both, of course, right? All technologies are dual use. I can see a lot of benefit to smart contract systems in particular in integrating AI models. One of the nice things about smart contracts, one of the properties that's often touted, is the fact that they eliminate ambiguity. They enshrine an agreement in code, and nothing can be less ambiguous than code. But ambiguity can be useful, and human beings are accustomed to navigating environments filled with ambiguity in various ways. For example, if you want a smart contract to have access to existing legal codes, it's going to have to interpret natural language documents. Smart contracts can't do that today, but if we integrate AI models into blockchain systems, they will be able to. And this is going to greatly broaden smart contracts functionality. Now, the novel is about one of the bad or harmful applications, potential applications of AI in blockchain systems, where, as I mentioned before, an AI agent is adjudicating a reward paid by a smart contract for crime. What's happening there, essentially, if you take a step back, is that an AI escape of a type is taking place. All right, everyone is worried about AI agents escaping their confines through cyber-physical systems, autonomous weapons systems. Air Force program goes awry because of a rogue AI agent taking over a jet or fleet of jets. But there's a vector of escape that people often don't think about, which is the financial system. Right? The financial system can be used to have a tangible impact on the world. And that's essentially what's happening in the book. Now, in the book, this AI agent is present in an oracle and it's facilitating an escape. But oracles are the gateway, or will be the gateway, between outside systems and the financial system that we're constructing with blockchains. And so they can actually serve a very positive role. They can act as filters or adjudicators to ensure that AI agents, rogue AI agents, are not able to escape, are not able to make harmful use of the resources living on blockchains. And that's where I see the positive side of the story.
So how do you see oracles and blockchains making it difficult for AI agents to affect all of these other systems, financial systems or electrical systems or whatever other systems? So how do you see Oracle networks playing a role in being this interface?
Yeah, I don't have a clear and concrete answer, but they are the gatekeeper. Right? And one can imagine AI tools powering the gatekeeper to make decisions about whether or not transactions should be allowed to proceed, about whether a particular system should be connected to a blockchain, about whether there's suspicious activity and we should slow or shut down an application because the application developer wants this to happen, right? So as I said, it's not immediately clear to me how these systems get built, but I think they can have a positive impact on the blockchain ecosystem as a whole. Essentially, Oracle systems can play a role in enforcing AI safety.
Yeah, I think that's definitely right. I think there's kind of two ways to look at AI from an Oracle network and therefore a blockchain point of view, because Oracle networks are the interface to blockchains and all of their contracts and all their value. One way is that the AI agents are a data source or a compute resource. There's some kind of resource that can do something for you in relation to the smart contract. And the Oracle network facilitates that interaction, just like it facilitates it for data or whatever. So if you have some computation somewhere that's really an AI model, the Oracle network can minimize the risk of mistakes, basically control how the AI can relate to the smart contract, make it a useful set of tools that are properly used and risk managed and so on. That's one way, I think, to look at AI systems. The other way to look at AI systems, which due to my paranoid nature, is very natural to me, is as an adversary, right? So if there are adversarial AIs and the adversarial AIs are trying to capture various systems, what systems are easier versus harder to capture? Generally speaking, in our industry, in the blockchain and Oracle network industry, we talk about the security, the superior security of decentralization. And I think if that's true, then that superior security should be harder for an AI adversary to manipulate and control. I think maybe we have seen AI adversaries not knowing they're AI adversaries, but at some point it'll become relatively clear they're AI adversaries. And if the less secure, less decentralized, less reliable systems fall over from those AI adversaries, whereas the blockchains, the Oracle networks, the smart contract systems continue to operate, I think that'll give them a whole new value, basically. Does that sound about right to you?
Yeah, I think so. And would you say that we have some advantage in addressing these problems and that we're building new infrastructure? And so these problems can be harder to grapple with than traditional financial infrastructure?
Yeah, I think Chainlink specifically is a very configurable system, and it's meant to configure how inputs and outputs work among smart contracts. Right now, a lot of those inputs and outputs are around validating data or making sure that the problems of a chain don't affect the value of something, right? So even if the chain isn't operating correctly, or even if the data isn't operating correctly, the Oracle network can kind of manage those risks and allow the transactional truth, the transaction to continue, or to protect the people in the transaction for various risks. So I think because the transactional truth is so valuable right now, that's the only thing that is truly valuable right now. The societal truth thing is such a big thing that it's not yet here, but I think that that's what the system is very well made to do right now. And it's done that for trillions of dollars in transaction value. So we know it can do that. I think if you implement AI as some kind of additional mechanism that becomes very useful for transactional truth, for transactions to happen, and you want to manage the risks of AI just like you want to manage the risks of blockchains or the risks of faulty data or the risks of whatever, then Oracle networks are a very natural place to encode all of that management. That's what kind of looks like to me. I think part of the problem with AI actually is detecting whether you have an AI adversary or a person who's an adversary or who. Like it's kind of a little bit
possible to distinguish.
Yeah, the AI doesn't just say, "Yep, I'm an AI. I'm here to screw you over. Here we go." Like it doesn't really work that way. So I think the more secure system, in a world of AI, especially where it can be misused, a more secure system just gets more valuable because the security risks get more intense, basically. That's kind of, I think, the premise of our industry, actually beyond the user control through private keys and all those other things. If you're in an adversarial cybersecurity environment and you have a system that can resist that, that's a great thing, in my opinion. So I guess it depends how crazy the world gets, which is something, as you can tell, I'm thinking a lot about. So, I mean, would love to hear your views on what is the positive relationship that you think could happen between AI and blockchains. So how do you see that evolve?
Well, as I mentioned, I can see smart contracts being enriched with the possibility of their operating on natural language and accommodating ambiguity, as I mentioned. But additionally, things like generative AI are already playing a role in the blockchain industry. Today, mostly a somewhat, I wouldn't say frivolous role, but superficial role, right? Producing new art forms. Not to say that these art forms themselves don't have merit, but they aren't impacting the way we do business. And they're not fundamentally creating a new artistic medium as I think they can be. So AI is already influencing the way that blockchains operate. I think that smart contracts are going at some point to be almost indistinguishable from AI models, that smart contracts will be interpreting the world through these models. And for the most part, as I said, if we do things right, that's going to be a good thing.
So the AI models will become so sophisticated in their interpretation of data and their connection to data and their connection to the real world that they'll become kind of like the eyes and ears. And then the Oracle network maybe is, I don't know, not exactly the blood-brain barrier, but something like that.
Yeah. Well, I think number one, it may help provide the performance boost that we need to incorporate AI models into blockchain systems, possibly even be involved in the training if we want to get assurances about how these models are trained, and serve as the connective tissue among models potentially. Maybe they compose on-chain, maybe they partially compose in Oracle systems. It's kind of hard to say.
Right. If the model hallucinates, there's some problem, then it doesn't affect the smart contract value, basically. The Oracle network can act as like a check against that and protect the value.
Yeah, and hallucinations are going to be one of the major challenges in achieving this model of AI-enriched smart contracts, right? Nobody knows how to deal effectively with hallucinations. We're going to need guardrails. And this is possibly something else that we incorporate into Oracle systems.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if the ground truth of Oracle network reports can actually be a check against the hallucination itself, right? Like, you think the answer is X, the answer is actually Y. I don't care how convincing you are, AI model, you're wrong, you're a bad model, I'm out. Like that, even that type of dynamic could be interesting.
That would be ideal if it's achievable.
Yeah, that would be very interesting. But that's a high bar. So one of the other things that I noticed in the book is the constant interaction between ancient Greek history and mythology, Oracle networks and blockchains. And these are two pretty different subjects. What led you to combine these varied subjects into a single book?
Yeah, there are a few different reasons for my doing that. One of them is that I have always had a kind of split personality, by which I don't mean a psychological disorder, but rather an interest both in classical history and in technology. When I was in college, for instance, I majored both in Latin literature and mathematics, and people had a hard time understanding how I could combine these two disciplines. Well, they have met in this book. So that's one reason. There are a bunch of reasons, actually. A second is the interest in mythology making that I mentioned earlier. Yet another is an interest in imbuing the book with a sense of awe that I often feel technology strips us of. When we have the answer to every question at our fingertips on the internet, and now, of course, through LLMs, ChatGPT answering essentially any question we may have, I think the world becomes denuded to some extent of mystery, right? This is not entirely true. And that's a feature that I wanted it to bring to the novel because I think it leads to much better, deeper, richer story making. So that's another thing. Yet another is that, strangely, I see a resonance or echo of ancient Greece in the world of Web3. And bear with me here. But ancient Greece was a remarkable place. In a short span of time, in a relatively tiny, among a tiny set of people, were invented several of the concepts that have become foundational to Western civilization and beyond, right? Philosophy, theater, realistic depiction of the human body, democracy. All these things were born in this small span of time in this place. And so it was an incredible crucible of innovation. And I see some of that spirit, we're not ancient Athens, but some of that spirit in the world of Web3, where similarly people are experimenting with new systems of governance in DAOs, experimenting with new art forms. I'm a big fan of NFTs in the form of NFTs, are proposing radical new philosophies and so on and so forth. So I think some of that spirit lives on in the world of Web3, and that was something I wanted to capture in a way in my novel.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's actually one of the things that attracted me to this whole industry when you put it that way, is that not only is there a lot of opportunity, but there's a lot of room for creatively coming up with the future.
And you have a background in philosophy, right? You've studied.
Yeah, that's one of the things I studied. Like you, actually, I've tried to study opposing things, because I find that when you study one thing, you kind of, I wouldn't say become one-dimensional, but you start to myopically view the world in one direction. You kind of just start looking in that direction. So I think your point about studying opposing things is very, very smart, actually, because what I found is that you looking at the same thing from different disciplines, you can see it basically the same thing from different perspectives. And it shows you a different side of it. Yeah, I know that's not super clear, but I'm guessing you know what I mean.
I'm glad to have a kindred spirit. Yes.
So it's definitely, yeah, I think this industry attracts a lot of people like that. I think a lot of people see the opportunity. They see there's a lot that can be, there's like a basically fertile ground to do something. And then there's also a lot of room to creatively solve problems where creativity can actually result in something tangible and useful and valuable. That's not actually that common a thing. There's a lot of places in the world, a lot of industries where that's not true. A lot of stuff's invented, or a lot of stuff, if you tried something new, it wouldn't stick. It just wouldn't stick for whatever reason. But the amount of stuff that sticks around here is amazing. Huge amount of stuff sticking all over the place.
And the radical experimentation.
Right. And there's enough value that people can afford to keep doing all these experiments just again and again and again. And there's even enough value in the whole system that people can fail at the experiment, do another experiment, fail at the experiment, do another experiment, and then eventually get to something successful. So yeah, I definitely share your sentiments, and I think it's difficult to include that in a novel, but those are very, very good sentiments. The mystery point, though, I'm curious about. You feel that in the modern world there's not enough mystery.
Yeah, in the ancient world, it was hard to know the answer to even basic questions. In the ancient world, people thought that heavier objects fall faster than lighter objects, and so on and so forth. In many cases, didn't know that the Earth was round, although actually the first person to measure the circumference of the world, Eratosthenes, was an ancient Greek, Hellenistic period, didn't have a clear sense of geography, right? And so they were encompassed with mystery. And this is part of the reason that they turned to their religion, and in particular to the god Apollo as a fount of truth. There was so much uncertainty that the idea of having an anchor of truth, I think, was especially appealing. And today, of course, there are huge realms of uncertainty, right? But I think we're less conscious of them. And I think the awe one experiences in the face of uncertainty runs a little less deep because we have quick answers to such a broad set of questions.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I feel many people are very sure of their views. People are like, my views are the right ones because whatever. And, I think you're right that makes life a little bit too simple and too clear and too obvious and so on. Luckily for me, I have lots of paranoia. So it's very difficult for me to believe anybody. And so the uncertainty and the mystery for me is ever present because who knows what happens next? You said it was X, but I don't know. Who are you again? I'm not so sure.
So your life is a thriller novel, in other words. Yeah.
But not this thriller novel.
No, not this one.
Not this.
Different thriller novel.
It's super clear. My life might be a thriller novel, but not this one.
Not this thriller novel.
Not this one.
Agreed.
Okay, yeah. Thank you very much. Okay, so the process of writing the book, what is your process for doing this? How does that work? I know a lot of people that would like to write things like you do, and not in the novel form. It's a very difficult thing to do. So what is your process? What is the process of writing a book like this?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I have anything as well-defined as a process. I would say that when I find an opportunity to sit down, the act of writing becomes all-absorbing, right? People use this term in the positive psychology literature, flow, meaning such intense focus that you lose track of time. You lose track of everything except the thing that you're working on. I don't know if you experience it, right? And so for me, writing is a flow experience. Now, it helped that I was writing this novel while I was on sabbatical in the midst of a pandemic. So the pandemic obviously was terrible and created a lot of psychological stress for me, like others. But it meant that I could bring a lot of focus to bear on this work. So it's not just a hobby for me, but an experience that I don't actually have in other aspects of my life. I enjoy doing research. I enjoy working with Chainlink. There are lots of things I enjoy, but nothing else is quite as absorbing as, metaphorically speaking, the act of putting pen to paper. But I don't have a process like, Anthony Trollope, the famous novelist, who would have his manservant, I think, wake him up at 5 a.m. and would write for 2 hours every morning. I could not do that.
Well, I think you have the most important thing, actually, out of all the biographies, autobiographies that I like to read about all kinds of folks, is that if you find that this makes you passionate and excited, then and you can actually turn it into something real that we're all here to think and learn about, and you published a book out of something that gets you this much joy. I think that's the most important thing. So I'm thrilled that you did it, and very impressed, and as always, and very excited by the topic of the book and the thoughtfulness in the book. And I'm sure with this type of approach to what you're doing, just like everything else you've done, this is just the beginning, and I'm sure there'll be other great things and other great novels. I think you have the most, of all the stuff that I've read, you have the most important quality for someone who's going to do something that they'll be proud of, is that you actually just want to do it. You're not doing it for someone else or something else. You just want to do it, and you want to do it well. And I feel very grateful to know someone like you.
Oh, well, thank you.
And I think it's great that you wrote this book for all of us. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for, as I said, the journey you have brought me on with Steve and the Chainlink community. As I said, all of that is present in some way in the novel. And this is the novel is a celebration of all of that, really.
It's our pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks so much, sir.